Hey everybody, what's up? It's Brian Goulet here of gouletpens.com, and this is Goulet Q&A episode number 50. I know that's kind of a round number, and had I really thought about it ahead of time, I would have done something special about it, but I kind of didn't. I just kind of did the normal old thing. So it's going to be just kind of a regular Q&A today. I'm going to have to keep it to 56 minutes or less, because that's how much time I have on my camera battery. So I know I've been running a little long lately. Originally when I set out to do these Q&As, it was supposed to be like 30 minutes, and now they're like an hour or more. So I just got so many questions, I want to answer them all. So I got 15 picked out for this week. I got way more questions than that, which actually kind of works out because next week I'm going to be out of town for the latter half of the week, and I won't be able to record my Q&A in the time that I normally would. Right now, this is Thursday morning here that I'm actually recording this thing. That gives me time to record it, gives me time to give it to Jenny. She edits it, cuts together, got to export it, put it up on YouTube, let it process, write the blog post, a lot of different things, process the podcast video, all that stuff. So there's a lot of things that have to happen, so I can't shoot it like Friday morning and then have it up on Friday. It just doesn't work like that. It's too much time, too many things to do before we can actually make it public. But that's okay. So normally I shoot it on Thursday morning, but next week I'm going to be out of town Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because I'm going to this pretty sweet event called Business Gets Personal. It's a one-day event up in the Big Apple that's being put on by Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, and Dave Ramsey. So three headliner keynote speakers that have all written books that I have read, most if not all of them, from each of these authors, and they have been highly influential in the way that we do things around the Goulet Pen Company around here. Specifically, Seth Godin's book, The Dip, taught me to, basically give up on the pen making side of the business and to get through kind of that initial, low point in setting up Goulet Pens, and then really discover fountain pens in retailing that took us to where we are today. So that was a very influential book at the time I read it. Gary V's book, Crush It, that's the reason I do these videos. It's the reason I started a blog. It's the reason we're in social media as much as we are, is through Gary's inspiration and kind of the roadmap that he laid out with Wine Library. And then Dave Ramsey has been a more recent find for me about a year and a half ago. But personality profile, disc profiling has changed our interview process tremendously. It's been a big influence on our company culture, leadership, management, a lot of that kind of stuff. As our business has become more of an organization as opposed to just a mom and pop kind of thing, he's really, his stuff has been very influential for us. So all three of these, I would go see any of these three. And then the fact that they're all coming together for this one event is mind blowing. So I might actually get to meet these guys and shake their hands and say, thank you for what you've done for me. And that's just really cool. So, I have to think through what I'll actually say to these guys, because, I know that I am going to be very starstruck with them, because in my world, in my mind anyway, they're like superstars, so it's going to be pretty cool to get to see them. So I'm excited about that. But anyway, it's going to put a little bit of a kink in my video plans. So I'm going to shoot another Q&A in the next couple of days so that I can have one for next week and it won't interrupt the schedule at all. I got a lot of questions from this week, so I think I'll be good to do that for next week. So that'll be pretty awesome. Got a couple of things that are going to be coming out pretty soon. Let me talk about what happened this past week a little bit. We've been pretty busy, a lot of meetings, a lot of things going on. We're having to pick new health plans and stuff, around here. Just a lot of internal things that have been going on. I posted a lot of videos last week. This week has been pretty sparse. Just taking care of a lot of, behind the scenes kind of business. But we did our physical inventory here this past Wednesday. We had to shut down the website for about 3 hours or so. We don't like to do that, but we have to, because we have to shut down the website completely so no orders are coming in, so that we can physically count every good that we have in our building, so that we can make sure that the counts we have are accurate. So when you place an order, we actually have the thing that you're buying. That's just anybody who's worked in a retail environment, what that's like. We do it quarterly. That way we can try to stay as accurate as possible. When you got 3,000 SKUs like we have, it's a bit to manage, but thank you for being patient on that. Got a couple of cool videos that are coming out here fairly soon. I'm working on some other ones. Jenny and I have been kind of finding our groove with the multicam setup. We're tweaking it, honing, toning, and finding some neat ways to do some certain things. We're still playing around, but hopefully you've been digging some of those changes we've been making. But we're also going to be trying to work on some quick look videos. So some of the shorter format ones. You know, we did some of these long format ones with the Faber-Castell and the Pilot E95S. And so those were longer form, kind of full on review. We're gonna do some shorter quick look ones. So we've been talking about that, kind of planning it out. We're gonna test that out here in the coming week or two. Let's try and get some of those nailed down. But I've already shot an update on the TWSBI Classic, because for those of you not aware, the TWSBI Classic now posts. So TWSBI came out with a new end cap that's got a couple of rubber O-rings on it that allow you to basically post the cap. Really cool, because I've been a big fan of that pen, except the fact that it didn't post. So the fact that TWSBI did that really kind of like is a huge win for me. So I have a video on what that's all about. And then also when we went to California a couple of weeks ago, we went out to see Yafa, who does Monteverde Stipula Delta Conklin. We're pretty big into Monteverde here. So we got to interview Yair Greenberg. He's the gentleman who started Yafa 36 years ago. So we got to interview him and kind of tell his story. You know, we're all about business being personal here. To prove that business can be personal is our company's mission statement, so or purpose statement. So we got to go and really see a very personal side of what you would typically associate as kind of this faceless corporate entity, you know, a US distributor for these brands. But they've actually got a really cool side of their story that they do, and we're gonna get to show some of that in this video. So we're cutting all that together now. The quality is gonna be okay, because I shot it all myself, and I'm not like, I've never done like full-on interviews. I tried like a multicam interview and I just screwed up the audio and all that stuff. So it's gonna, you know, Jenny right now is definitely doing like, trying to put lipstick on a pig with the footage that I shot. I shot it before she even started working here. So I shot that footage, and then she's trying to like cut it together as best she can. She's really having to work with some junk footage I gave her, but it's gonna be okay. The content is gonna be really cool, and it's gonna be really neat. So I think it's gonna turn out okay. So that'll be coming out probably in the next week or so. We're working on that. That's going to be more of a produced video than we've ever done before. Shot a lot of B-roll, you know, of the different sides of the manufacturing they have going on there. It should be pretty neat. A really kind of in-depth insight into what they do there. So anyway, I'll go ahead and get into the questions here, because I've now got 49 minutes left. I've already chewed up like 7 minutes. Oh gosh. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and kick it off here. So it's open forum, so I got all kinds of random questions today. Joy Noel on Ink Nouveau asked, what criteria are used by the option on Goulet pens to sort by most popular? Sometimes the order surprises me. I presume each SKU is sorted according to the number ordered during some recent period of time. If so, what time period? Yeah, so it's not like a set thing. We basically, it's a manual setting. So we have to go in and plug in what those SKUs are. So it's not, I wish it was something that was just auto-populated through the website, but it isn't, unfortunately. So it's a fairly manual process. So sometimes it's not as up to date. So sometimes the order may be surprising to you, because if we've kind of fallen behind a little bit on some of them, which is entirely possible with all we've had going on here recently, then probably some of the newer, hotter items that you would expect to be up there may not be, just because we haven't updated it recently enough. Usually we'll go back about 60 days. So we have to like manually go and pull reports on our sales to see. That's how we base everything, is based on sales. Because popularity, I mean, how else would you measure it except with some hard numbers, right? You can't just go by what you feel might be most popular. It's hard numbers. So we have to go off of what's actually sold on our site. So we'll go and pull our sales data for the 60 days or so, and then, you know, just rank it and then plug it in based on whatever it is that you're searching. So it's kind of a better than nothing kind of thing. The data could be better for sure. We're working on some things to try to improve some stuff like that, but you know, maybe we'll have an update on that in the next month or so. But for the time being, that's how it's working. All right, Paradox Studios on YouTube asked, I'm left-handed and have lots of problems with cheaper pens, for example, the Lamy Safari. Are these pens scratchy because of my writing position? I write with the hand above the writing line. Okay, so you are writing what's called hook-handed. That's where you're writing, you know, you've got your hand way up here, your pen is down here, and that is really kind of the opposite angle, the opposite direction that fountain pens are kind of designed to be written with. It's not your fault. I mean, you just write how you write. But I think that most fountain pens, when they grind those nibs, are made to be written in, usually in the right-handed position, because that's the majority of people are right-handed. About 90%, I would say, of the population is right-handed. give or take, you know. So, and most of them hold the pen kind of at a 45-degree angle to the written, you know, line. And so I think, especially with cheaper pens like this, so in order to get pens made cheaply, you have to take out the human element in the labor. You have to automate everything. So you have mechanized process that goes into manufacturing all these nibs. And the cheaper they are, the less human beings actually touch the things before they leave the factory. So when it comes to fountain pens, basically they set the machines up to grind them as best will generally work for most everybody. And that is going to be in the right-handed normal position, I would assume. I don't know all of this for hard fact, but I'm just going off of what makes a lot of sense and from what I can understand from talking to some people who are in the biz. When you're holding it in kind of a different position, it's going to be less forgiving because it's not really made to be held that way. You're holding it in the opposite direction it's meant to go. You're pushing it instead of pulling it, which just that alone is going to make it feel a little scratchier. So, you know, that's why you're going to end up with, you know, that. So you said cheaper pens. I don't know if you've had better experiences with other pens or whether just cheaper pens are all you've gotten so far. It's hard for me to say, like, if you buy more expensive pens, you will definitely have a better experience, because I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. The thing that's working against you left-handed is you want to use the finest nibs possible if you end up having your hand that goes over top of the writing, because you don't want it to smear. You want that a little ink on the paper as possible. You don't want it to pool up on the page and then smear with your hand. So you want to use finer nibs. However, finer nibs are going to write scratchier, especially in that pushing motion. So it's kind of like a fine balance, and you're just going to have to experiment and see what works well for you. But I will say that in general, the more expensive pens generally receive more care from human beings when they test out those pens to make sure that they work in a variety of writing positions. Machines, they can only do but so much, but human beings, you have a lot more, you know, if you actually have a person sitting down with the pen and you're smoothing that nib in a variety of directions, and you can kind of test out for different ways, you're generally going to have a more forgiving nib than you would with some cheaper pens. So that's about all I can say. I have to speak very generally because, you know, I'm not left-handed, so I can't really test it that, you know, my left-handed writing is not refined in any way. So but that's generally the statement that I can make. Okay, hopefully that helps you out. All right, Miguel Landestoy on YouTube said, do you happen to know if there are any glow-in-the-dark inks? I think that would be pretty cool. Well, that would be pretty cool. If you're thinking glow-in-the-dark, like that traditional kind of like greenish color that just, you know, it kind of absorbs the light, and then when you turn out the light, it glows. No, there's no fountain pen ink that I'm aware of that does any of that, because that would actually require like particulates, you know, physical, you know, chunks of that kind of iridescent whatever stuff. I don't even know what that is. I don't know what I'm saying. But you know, the stuff that actually glows, that is like a hard physical thing. It's not a liquid that does that. So you're not going to be able to get that in fountain pen ink form because it's going to clog up your pen. I have seen that type of, you know, old school like glow-in-the-dark ink in J. Herbon had a calligraphy ink. I think they might have discontinued it, but I don't remember if it's still around. It's been a couple of years since I carried it, but it was only for dip pens because it was, you know, that particulate kind of stuff, and you had to use it with a dip pen. But it was what you're talking about, so you could accomplish that. However, you can still get kind of that seeing an ink in the dark kind of thing through UV reactive inks, fluorescent inks. Noodler's actually has several different ones. The most popular one is Blue Ghost by far because it is an invisible ink. You cannot see it unless you have it under black light. It's pretty cool. They've got some other inks, like some of their highlighter inks, like Firefly, the Dragon Cat series. Those all will fluoresce under UV light. And actually, if you go on gouletpens.com, you can look at fluorescent inks, and those will all be UV reactive. So you can use a black light and see those in the dark. So those are kind of cool. They're not glow in the dark per se, but they're glow under UV light. And I will say that with all of those, you'll see them better if you use them on off-white paper. Because if you're using white paper, the paper itself is going to react to the UV light more. So if you're using off-white paper, the paper is going to stay darker. It's going to make that UV reactive ink pop more. Alex Kartal on YouTube. There's something that I've been wondering about for a long time. What's with the Ninja Turtle figures in the background? Well, I'm actually surprised I don't get asked more about this, Alex. I've done 50 of these things, and no one hardly ever talks about my Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I've got some Ninja Turtle figurines back there. Some of them were sent to me by a loving fan, and several of them are actually from my own childhood. It's not really a big deal. I'm not like a super, Ninja Turtles nerd or anything like that. But I was a fan of Ninja Turtles as a kid. I think it was the original Ninja Turtles movie was the first movie that I ever saw in a movie theater. Nice little trivia fact there for you. And Drew, who's our customer care manager here, we went to school. We met in 3rd grade, and we've been friends, for a long time. We used to play Ninja Turtles on the playground at elementary school and that kind of thing. So, just when Drew started working here, it was kind of like, oh yeah, Ninja Turtles, remember? And we kind of like, just started talking about it more. And then I was like going through a bunch of, toys that my mom had saved, because my son is getting to the age where he's starting to play with some of the toys that I had saved from when I was a kid. And my mom found some of these old Ninja Turtle figurines, and she gave them to me, and I was like, hey, these are kind of cool. And I was like, hey, Drew, Ninja Turtles, hey, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'll just stick them in the back of the video. Why not? And that's kind of where they came from. So it's not like a huge deal. But I will say that Joseph has never, my son, he's turning 5 in January, so he's, not really 4.5, but, whatever. He's getting to that age where Ninja Turtles are starting to be very appealing. He's also really getting into Legos, which is awesome. But anyway, so he's recently found a love for Ninja Turtles, which I did not push on him at all. It's one of his other friends at school. He's a big Ninja Turtles fan and sees the movies or shows or whatever. I don't even know. They've kind of like rebranded Ninja Turtles in recent years, and now they're cool and whatnot. I don't know. I remember like the old school ones. But anyway. So my son now is like really into Ninja Turtles, and he has a pair of Ninja Turtle pajamas that has like the half shell on his shirt and stuff. I don't know. It's pretty adorable. So it's kind of neat, just like circle of life here going on. But Dane M asked in an email, said, I love my Pilot Vanishing Point fine, inked with either Noodler's Elysium, Waterman Serenity Blue, or Diamine Oxblood, but very few notebooks or papers that I've found are both affordable and fountain pen friendly. Any recommendations for good paper on a budget? Well, yeah, okay. So basically when it comes to paper, more or less you get what you pay for. And I found that especially true in the US because we do not have a strong fountain pen culture here in the US. I am trying to help change that, but in general, we don't have a lot of fountain pen users in this country. So most of the paper that's made here is fairly absorbent because you don't really need the same like ink resistant properties that cost more to manufacture when you're using ballpoints and roller balls and pencils. So the nicer papers tend to come from Europe or Japan, generally. That's not 100% rule, but pretty much. And if you're getting nicer paper that's made in the US, it's going to be expensive. So there are some exceptions to the rule, but in general, if you want nice paper, it's going to be more expensive. So there's a couple of diamonds in the rough, like I've had good experience with black and red notebook. I know Staples has their, what is it called, like earth-friendly or eco-friendly or something like that. It used to be called Bagasse, and now I don't know what it's called. But I've heard some good things about that. I've heard mixed things about Piccadilly notebooks, which are a knockoff of Moleskine. I haven't had like, the best experience with a lot of cheaper notebooks. I try and find the best value ones I can, but for me, I'd rather have like a certain standard and then just charge what I need to charge than to sell something that's not that great, but is cheap. You can get cheap paper just about anywhere. So it's going to depend on the formats. I'll say that about the price. If you're looking for just loose sheet paper, you can get a nice laser copy paper that will give you, like HP 24-pound laser jet or 32-pound premium. Those are going to be really good. There's other like premium. I've tried other things, and I've actually got another question that will lead into this that talks about how do you know what paper is good and what's not. Actually, I didn't even put that in order. I'll have to rearrange my order a little bit here. I didn't think about that. But anyway. So, how do you really pick a good paper? You honestly just have to try it a lot of the time or go off of reviews or whatever. But Depending on the format, the bound journals are going to be the most expensive. Going with something like, I'm talking like Rhodia Web Notebook or Quavada Sabana, something like that. The hardcover bound ones. Those are going to be the most expensive because you're paying for the format a lot. Your stitched, glued binding, all that kind of stuff. The cheaper ones will be like Rhodia, or not the Rhodia specifically, but like wire-bound notebooks, maybe staple-bound notebooks. So just the binding method of those makes them more affordable, so you're paying kind of more just for the paper, not for the format. Then the loose leaf kind of copy paper will be the most affordable. And then I will just kind of say that none of the paper that I carry here is really cheap. It's all pretty much premium stuff to some degree or another. Leuchtturm is kind of a little more of a value, like some of the Apica and Banded Apple and whatnot are a little less expensive than like your Rhodia and Clairefontaine. So you may be able to, if you like those formats, you may be able to use those for more of your liking. But in general, I don't have like one paper that's like, yeah, this is like the most super bargain paper in the world. I really don't have anything that's truly a bargain. It's really like you get what you pay for kind of thing, in my experience. But if I'm wrong, please leave a comment. Even if it's something I don't carry, leave a comment in YouTube or Ink Nouveau. I'd be happy to hear and explore. All right, so I'm actually going to skip my order here and go to a different question that I had later on. Okay, so Simdhuja M on Facebook. I had him as question number 13, but him or her, I'm sorry, I do not know if you're based on your name. I apologize there if I insulted you there, but I'm going to skip my order here a little bit and go ahead and go to your question. You say, I get that the minimum quality of paper for serving the purpose of a fountain pen should say 24 pound, not necessarily. But there are so many adjectives to the quality of paper like coated, premium, etc. What are these and how many more varieties are there? It's something like my fingers recognize the quality and texture of good paper, but I get confused with these denominations. Please help. Oh boy, do I feel you. It's like, this is one of those things with fountain pen ink. It's kind of the same thing, just like you have with paper. Some of the marketing words that are used to say the quality of something is completely subjective, and it's not have any kind of standardization whatsoever across the industry, if you will. Paper is especially terrible because it's not just the thickness or the weight of the paper that determines how well it's going to perform with fountain pen ink. When you have something like 24 pound paper, all that's telling you is how much the paper weighs. That's it. It's not telling you about the coating. It's not telling you about the absorbency or the quality or the brightness or the pH or the acid level or anything like that. All it's telling you is how much the thing weighs. So 24 pound is an American designation for pounds. In Europe and Japan and whatnot, they use grams per square meter. So a lot of times you have to kind of translate them between the two. Actually, if you go to Wikipedia's got some good stuff about paper, especially paper sizes, paper weights, things like that. That's actually the most comprehensive resource I've found. Yeah, coated paper, premium. I mean, I've picked up some paper here that is absolute crap that says premium or ink resistant or whatever, and it just stinks. It's terrible stuff. So it's frustrating because you basically have to try it and see what works. And certain inks may perform differently on certain papers too, so that's another kind of element that will throw you off. I know when we went through, HP used to have this 28 pound laser paper that was awesome. It was affordable. It performed beautifully. It was smooth. It was a pleasure to write on. And we used to print all of our invoices and everything on that paper. And then HP discontinued it. So then my choice was only to go with a 32 pound premium HP, the 24 pound laser jet, which was not quite as good as the 28, or to go exploring outside of HP. I have no affiliation with HP, by the way. That's the paper we use, but that's because it's a good quality. So I tried all this other stuff. I went to like Office Max and just picked up like every type of like premium laser paper I could, and a lot of it was junk. Like I couldn't even tell that it was laser paper. It was so absorbent and would feather like crazy, and it just did not perform well. It would probably perform just fine for actually printing laser toner, but for fountain pens, didn't do so hot. So the HP 24 pound was what I settled on because of performance versus cost. The 32-pound stuff is phenomenal if you want to pay for that. But yeah, I feel your frustration because there are not a lot of standard designations. The only ones that I can really say kind of definitively are things like the paper weight, so like that 24-pound or whatever, or if you get the grams per square meter, those will be standardized because that's actually calculated. Now, not every paper manufacturer even uses that kind of designation, you know, especially if you're buying something in like a bound journal format or some kind of like bound notebook, you may not get a paper weight, and that can be frustrating because then you can't tell unless you touch it and use it what it's going to be like. The other things that will often be a designation will be something like acid-free or pH neutral. That just has to do with the chemical process that's used to make the paper. You want acid-free and pH neutral if you're using it for archiving purposes. If you're not going to be archiving it, it doesn't really matter. You know, using bleaches and stuff like that are generally used to make paper white. In cheaper, you know, paper processes, it will break down the paper sooner. So if you buy a cheaper notebook and you keep it for 5-10 years, it's going to start to yellow and it's going to start to degrade. Your ink may not last as long on it. So if it's the kind of thing like you really want to keep what you're writing for a long time, get acid-free pH neutral paper. But beyond that, you know, you really have to try it, or go to somewhere like Fountain Pen Network, or go to a blog like mine or somebody else's where they've actually tested out the specific product you're looking at with some of the inks that you generally use. Even just fountain pen ink in general, you can get a good idea of how it's going to work, and then you can tell from, you know, somebody else's review if it's going to be a good shot for you or not. Paper's tough because there are just so many elements to it that you need to take into account. You've got, you know, not only the physical properties, which are not always even written out, let alone standardized in terms of the format and you know, the words they use. But then there can be other elements like, you know, the color of the paper, the color of the lines, the thickness of the lines, you know, and all those other things that can factor into your own enjoyment. So it's one of those things, it's like you love it and you hate it, just the personalization aspect of this hobby. Paper is a big factor. All right, Dane M. Nope, I already answered your question, Dane. Sorry. Let's see here. I went out of order, now I'm all screwed up. All right, let's see here. Okay, Eric O. Brian, Goulet Pens has a strong presence in the social media / technology arenas. Ooh, strong presence. Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. Do you ever rethink all the engagement efforts due to time constraints? Have you found a way to manage your business while growing your business? Ooh, boy, these are like questions that I should ask, you know, Gary Vee or something next week. I don't know that I would say I have a strong presence. I would say I've got a strong presence in the fountain pen world, right? So in the grand scheme of social media, I am like a zit on a fly's butt, right? So I am just not really a big deal at all. But I try to be present in the areas where my fans and customers are talking, right? So like Fountain Pen Network, got my blog, my YouTube channel. We've got an Instagram channel, which I don't do much with. That's Alex is doing, and Rachel's on there. We're on Twitter, which I used to do more with. Sometimes I cover it. Alex helps with that. Rachel will jump on there. So we're kind of tag team in Twitter, especially because that one's like, you got to be on it all hours of the day if you can. So here, we're on Reddit. That's mainly Rachel. What else are we on? Pinterest. That's pretty much Alex. Rachel dabbles on that a little bit. And so in Facebook as well. I don't do much with Facebook. That's Alex and Rachel. So for me, it's mostly, I've got my own Twitter handle, Brian Goulet _ that I will do some things on, but I do not manage it nearly as well as I should. I'm on the YouTube comments, the blog comments. Just those alone keep me really stinking busy. So it's a kind of thing that, like, for social media stuff in general, which is kind of a buzzword that I don't even really like to use that much because it sounds so bandwagony. But basically, we've been doing, this content marketing social media thing for the last 5 years. And just now everybody's starting to realize like, oh, this is a thing that we should do, you know, because now Google algorithm is picking that stuff up more than, you know, your pay-per-click and banner ads and all that kind of stuff. We've never touched any of that stuff. All that paid advertising stuff, we've never done anything with it. And now it's almost kind of like a point of pride, like, dang, like we built this company just based on the engagement that we've done kind of at the grassroots level. And, you know, I kind of like don't want to do ads now just to kind of prove that it doesn't have to be done that way. I don't know. Maybe I could grow the business faster if I paid for ads, but it's not really my goal, you know? So, yeah, back to your question though. I'm going off on a tangent, but back to your question, Eric. Do you ever rethink the engagement due to time constraints? Geez, you know, time is just one of the things that, you know, everyone has the same amount of time, right? It's all a matter of how effectively you use it. So I definitely feel like I do not make the most out of everything that I do. I think if I was ever content, then I would start not doing as well. Because I'm always trying to up my game, I'm always trying to do things better, more effectively. You know, trying to train other folks around here to help out, to answer more questions and all that. That has been my biggest push in 2014, is to build up other leaders, build up others in the company to have some of the knowledge that I have so that I don't become the constraint when it comes to social media, when it comes to product knowledge, education, you know, video production, etc. All those things. You know, I have a good amount of knowledge that I would like to share with as many people as possible. But if I'm the only one doing it, I will be a limited resource. You know, if I can train up others, build up other leaders, other people to help me out, that can be really powerful, because then we can all go out and do some pretty amazing things. That's been the key to success of Goulet in the recent years, has been building up others and helping out, which is why my video load has been a little sporadic at times, because I'm focusing more on kind of where the needs are internally. So, you know, it's like if you take care of your team members first, then they will take care of your customers for you. You know, there's no way I could do even a fraction of everything my team does to help you directly. So I have to help others, and we all come up with a plan of action and really act on kind of the principles, the values that we set up in this company. So from a social media standpoint, it does get tough because I do become my own constrained resource. And social media itself, you know, it's so easy to tell when you're not being genuine, or when you have somebody that is doing something under your name. That's a no-no, you know, so I got to do everything authentically. You know, on YouTube, we changed over our name to the Goulet Pen Company from the Ink Nouveau a year or so ago. And once we started doing that, I realized like, gee, nobody knows that I'm the one posting the comments on YouTube. So I started tagging my name at the end of every comment, you know, just to kind of make sure that you knew that it was actually me. You know, same kind of thing, like when I'm on Twitter on the Goulet Pens handle, you know, I'll put a little caret BG or something when I can, you know, just so you kind of know that it's me. And so, you know, that's kind of thing. On the blog, I don't have to do that because I'm under my own Discuss account and it shows my name, so that's really handy. My nose is running a little bit. Sorry, I keep touching it. But anyway, so yeah, it's just, it's always a balancing act, you know, and that's something I struggle with, and I have no idea how somebody like Gary Vee does it. You know, he's got over 1 million Twitter followers. How in the world can he get anything done? Because whenever he fires up his Twitter account, I'm sure he's got like 10,000 private messages and stuff like that. You know, it's just crazy. So I don't know. I think you just do the best you can and really try to make the most of what you have. You know, if you're doing your best, then what really more can you do? So that's what I can say about that for the time being. All right, Richard B. on Facebook said, I've been thinking about getting a Lamy 2000, but the new Lamy Studio Wild Ruben has piqued my interest. Both have a 14 karat gold nib. Could you compare the writing experience between these two? Which nib do you like better? Okay, well, I don't like have both of them. The Wild Ruben, I got it as a sample, shot that video, and had to send it back. So I don't have that pen. So I'm sorry, I can't give you an actual writing sample here, but I have used that nib before. I used it in the video there. I've written with it other times before. Actually, now that I think about it, I have other studios that have that nib on it, but I don't have the time to ink it up right now, but I can speak in general terms. If you look on the Nib Nook on gouletpens.com, you can actually compare the writing samples between the Lamy 2000 and the 14 karat Lamy nib. So it's a little confusing because they are actually both 14 karat gold nibs, but the 14 karat nib on the Studio is different than the 14 karat nib on the Lamy 2000, especially because the Lamy 2000 is ground a little differently. It's got more of a sweet spot to it, so it's not quite as forgiving, especially in terms of rotation of how it writes. So you have to hold it in a little more of a specific position when you're using it. It takes a little getting used to. Some people just can't deal with it and they send them back. Other people, they love it and just fall in love with it and it's for their favorite pen. I personally am a big fan of the Lamy 2000. I like the way that the nib writes better on the Studio, but I like the rest of the pen better on the Lamy 2000. So if I could have the Lamy 2000 pen with the nib from the Studio, I would do that because that would be the best of all worlds to me. Not that I don't like the Lamy 2000 nib, because I really do, but it's not quite as good as the other one. Good being a very subjective term. It's not quite as forgiving. And the one on the Studio is very kind of springy. It's very soft. Not in terms of soft like you think Pilot Falcon's soft, where it actually flexes. That's not true. But soft in terms of like springiness. It just feels very smooth while you're writing it. Definitely one of the smoothest nibs I've ever used is the 14 karat nib on the Lamy Studio. And it's very wet as well. So if you have an extra fine on that nib, it's going to write like a fine with most other pens, you know. And the broad, goodness, the broad 14 karat Studio nib is like the wettest nib that I think I've ever used. It's crazy. It's like just gushes, almost too much. You know, I like my wet pens, but it's almost too much. So I hope that answers your question there. Oh yeah, and the last thing I will say is that, you know, as far as like which pen I end up using more, it's the Lamy 2000. But if I was to be like getting the pen to present to somebody or give as a gift or something like that, just the overall presentation of the Studio is better. So that's, especially that Wild Reuben, that gold nib is going to come in that nice gift box with the ink and everything. That's going to be cool. Tristan N on Facebook, does the Goulet team watch your videos as well? Yeah, they do. However, I got a pretty good backlog of videos now, you know, and as you know, if you've gone through and kind of watched a bunch of them, it's a bit of an investment of time. So yeah, they definitely do. We don't have like requirements or curriculum per se, except for our customer care team, we do have kind of a training plan in place with certain videos that they need to watch to get their product knowledge kind of at least to a base level, right? So pretty much everybody we've hired in this company, with the few exception of a couple people in the past, have never had any experience with fountain pens. I actually kind of like it that way because, especially in the customer care position, because it's really neat to see them go through this kind of discovery process. You know, it keeps it fresh, it keeps it new and exciting just in the environment around here. And it also keeps them asking the questions that I know I need to keep in my mind when I am talking about these products. I could easily take for granted how much I've learned in the last 5 years and start speaking over a lot of people's heads. But I don't want to do that because the whole point of doing this kind of stuff, aside from just, you know, saying hey and being kind of engaging and whatnot, is, you know, I'm really trying to get fountain pens into people's hands. I'm trying to get people who are kind of interested in fountain pens but don't really know about them or are intimidated by them. I'm trying to get them to be comfortable with the idea of fountain pens, and a lot of that comes down to education at the very kind of introductory level. That's why I did Fountain Pen 101. That's why I do a lot of the videos I do. It's not just to sell stuff. I mean, I'm a retailer, and yes, that's how I stay in business, so there's obviously that component to it. But usually when I'm shooting a video, I'm thinking to myself, like, what good is this going to be to people? What are they going to learn? What are they really going to take away? It's not just like, hey, I've got this product and I bought X number of units and I need to move them, so let me take this approach. You know, I don't like to think that way, and I don't really think that way at all. I'm not that great of a salesman per se, but I like to look at it in terms of education, you know. In terms of fountain pens in general, the overall fountain pen industry is going through some tough times, and there's a lot of company, you know, I just heard in the last week that like Conway Stewart gone, you know, liquidated. they've been around for a long time, and they were a brand that when I first got into fountain pens was like a holy grail brand, like really nice high-end stuff. Now they're gone. They do not exist anymore. So that's tough to see. You know, these companies kind of getting bought up and consolidated and dying out. And you're seeing retailers that have been around a really long time that are starting to die out. And I don't think that it has to be that way. I think if you're viewing fountain pens as a commodity and you're trying to just kind of age with the market of people that already know about them and grew up with them, yeah, you're going to see some tough times. But if you take the approach that I've tried to take, then I feel like there's a bright future for fountain pens, because I think people that are into it are really passionate about it. It's a strong community of people just that are really nice, really helpful, very appreciative of the work that I do and others do to help to educate and promote this beautiful hobby. And so I hate to even call it a hobby. It's more like a lifestyle, really. But you know, that's kind of where I come from. So I try to. Boy, I really got on a tangent, didn't I? Weren't you asking me about team watching the videos? Sorry, I really went off. Anyway, okay. So I'll try and reel myself back in here. So my customer care team, I like them to be fresh because they deal with a lot of new people, and if for them to come in and be new and know how overwhelming it is and then go through our own kind of education, they'll say, oh my gosh, yeah, I know where you're coming from because I was like that a month ago. Watch this video, look at what Brian talks about, and these are the points you can really take out, and it'll change your whole perspective on cleaning your fountain pen or whatever the case may be. And that is invaluable. However, I'm just putting out like so many videos lately, so now we're trying to come up with more of a plan. Like we've got a really kind of fresh and new customer care team. So we're trying to get them up to speed. There's so much product knowledge that needs to happen to provide service at the level we do here. It's really a challenge, but we got a great team. They're super motivated, and they're learning more every single day. So give them a little bit of grace. You know, sometimes they say things they misunderstand, little bits and pieces may be wrong, and that's okay. You need to give them grace. You know, they're human beings too. But even still, we're trying to think like, what can we do? I'm talking to Drew right now about like, what can we do ongoing? Of course, you know, because now Jenny's here, we're starting to put out some more video content. I'm thinking like, is it best to like sit down and have like regular training sessions with our team and show videos? We've done that sometimes, like special videos, and we did like Goulet values. You know, that was a big deal. And so we sat down and interviewed several people, and it all cut together really nicely. So we had like, we do regular Wednesday company meetings. We watched that video over the company meeting. And so that was really cool. But we can't do that for every video we put out, because that would just, you know, especially like Q&As, they're like an hour long, you know, it's like, you know, so, you know, Drew is working with me to help with the customer care side of things, of like, what are the pertinent things to point out, you know. And then right now it's kind of been like, for new stuff that's come out, it's hard to say like, let's all sit down and watch a Q&A, because that's an hour that we're not answering phones, not answering emails, you know, so on. So we got to kind of stagger it. And so we're still working that out. But yes, in general, I do like my team here to watch as many videos as they can and are interested in doing. All right, I need to start answering my questions faster, because we've got, I can't even tell how many minutes left. Not that many. I may just end up like dying at the end of this video. I think it flashes up a battery. And you know, you might be asking yourself like, Brian, why don't you just plug in the camera? Okay, so I've got like some weird interference thing between this mic and this camera. If I plug in the camera, I get like this ground loop hum kind of thing in the microphone. So I have to run it off the battery. It's very bizarre. I should probably just get a new microphone and that would solve that problem. But anyway, okay, let me just shut up and keep going. I need to shut up and talk, right? Okay, Adrian C on Facebook said, I know that the Goulet Pen Company has no control over this, but when is the TWSBI 580 USA coming out? Sorry, capitalized everything there, so I have to say it very authoritatively. I've been waiting on my next order so that I can include that pen. I know I'm being impatient, but I just love ordering stuff from your company. Can't wait to put in my next order for some pens and ink. Well, that's cool, okay, and I'm really sorry that you've been waiting so long. You're right, we have no control over this, and I'm sorry. But the TWSBI 580 USA is available, I believe right now, from TWSBI, so you could get it from their website. We are getting our first shipment in today, as of the publishing of this video. So Friday, September 26th is when we're supposed to get our shipment in. It is not going to be enough for everybody that we know that wants these pens. I know that. We're going to be getting another shipment in a week or two after that. That will be kind of a follow-up order. So it's going to be like right out the gate, they're going to disappear. We're going to get more, and then those will sell relatively quickly too. But what I will say is, I'm pretty sure that not enough of these pens are being made for all the people that want them, just in general. I don't know exactly how many we'll end up getting, but it's probably not going to be enough. And this is a one-shot deal. They're not making more of these pens. So if you want it, as much as painful as it is, you know, you got to wait and then jump on it as soon as you get the chance, okay? Go to the email notification on the specific nib size, the specific product you're looking at. Sign up for that notification. As soon as you get that email, go. And if you don't get it the first go around, sign back up again, because we're going to be getting another shipment and you get to do the same chance. I'm sorry that we can't do like a wait list kind of thing or reserve or a pre-order or anything. That would not be fair for us to do, because we have more people that want the pen than we'll be able to get. So I'm really sorry about that, and I know it stinks, but that's the best way that we can do it. All right, Dane M said in an email, as someone relatively new to fountain pens, I'm trying to branch out and try new things, but really have trouble adventuring past Metropolitans, Safaris, and my Vanishing Point. Are there any more adventurous pens that you would recommend for a noob like me? Well, you know, Dane, you got a Vanishing Point. That is not like a vanilla kind of pen. You know, that's a pretty adventurous pen. You know, that's not something that most people just like get as a newbie. So that's pretty cool that you got that. So you're already doing better than you think you are, okay? Right along with that, I think like the first kind of like adventurous gold nib fountain pen that people usually go for is either a Vanishing Point or a Lamy 2000. Those are kind of the ones that like, you don't know if you're really going to like them because they're kind of different than most other pens, but they've got a phenomenal reputation, but some people hate them and other people love them. And so it's like, it is kind of that adventurous thing. I don't know exactly what you mean by adventurous, whether you mean like crazy features or just like, you know, whatever, but I'm just kind of going off of what I think you mean by adventurous. So, the Lamy 2000 would be one if you wanted to get kind of in that upper range. If you want to go a little bit lower, you know, I would say some kind of neat pens. We just picked them up, the Faber-Castell Lume and the Basic. They're kind of different. They're kind of weird, you know, weird in a good way from some of the other pens. You know, just they're unique. They're you know, relatively affordable, not much more than a Safari really. So those are kind of neat. I would consider those. If you like the Safari and you just want something a little more sophisticated, you could get the Lamy All-Star. That's a pretty low risk, which I guess you asked for adventurous, so I don't really know why I'm suggesting that one, but the Lamy Studio too. That one's really cool. So if you like the Lamy experience and you want a different format, not quite jumping up to the Lamy 2000, the Studio is a good one to try out. And since you mentioned the Vanishing Point, I thought I would throw out there the Pilot Falcon. You know, that's a cool one. That one's pretty adventurous too. That's another one that's like got a really good reputation, but some people just can't deal with it. So it's a little bit you know, kind of risky, you know, getting that pen. And it's an expensive pen too, so it's a bit of an investment, just like the Vanishing Point is. But it's got that soft nib, so you get a little line variation and stuff. Whether or not that's for you, you know, determine that for yourself. But if you do find that kind of appealing, that would be a little bit of adventure in your life. And then I really like the Pilot E95S that just came out too, honestly. That pen is very different too. Very small pen, very light. You know, got kind of a neat look to it, and you can post the thing, and it's got a little bit of softness to the nib. It's got an extra fine nib on there that's so fine. So that would be another one that would be kind of out there. So I don't know, those are just some suggestions. There's lots of other ones that have some cool designs and stuff, like Monteverde has some really cool pens, like the Intima. I really like that. Some of the designs on there, that Volcano Gray is awesome. The Regatta Sport, you know, that pen's heavy and it's like almost like a, you know, club, but it's a cool looking pen. I don't know, there's lots of options for you. All right, at Blush and Pencil on Twitter asked, how did you get into fountain pens, writing, collecting, etc.? Oh boy, so this is a long story, and actually if you go to a video called Reflection After 4 Years, this was a video that Rachel and I shot together, really kind of tells our whole story in a very succinct 45 minutes. But it's a really cool video because we kind of talk through the whole history of, you know, how I started making pens, how I discovered fountain pens, how this company came to be. Really kind of neat. So that would be cool. So go check that out. I didn't know anything about fountain pens at all until I was about 25. I wasn't about 25. I was 25. And so I discovered fountain pens through the DC Fountain Pen Super Show in 2009. So I went to the show because I was going to try to sell my rollerball pens that I was making. And I thought, okay, this would be a cool venue for me to check out. Maybe next year I could get a booth at this thing and sell a lot of pens, and who knows. So I went to this thing and I didn't know anything about pens, and I was looking around like, man, there's a lot of people and a lot of pens here. I wonder if fountain pens are something I should explore. So I bought a bottle of ink at the show, spilled it the first time I tried to fill my pen, and it was a disaster. But that's when I was like, I really need to figure out what in the world is so appealing about these pens. How do these things work? The guts of the pen, I was like, I don't even know what's going on. So I started tearing it up on Fountain Pen Network, cruising around on different blogs, trying to learn as much as I could. And it was through that I realized, like, oh man, maybe I should like start making fountain pens and I could sell ink and paper, and then that would be kind of a neat side of my business. And what ended up happening is no one wanted to buy the pens that I was making. Everyone wanted to buy the paper and ink. Okay, so sold more paper and ink, discovered more about paper and ink, started asking questions, and discovered that there were not a lot of retailers that were focusing on kind of that whole writing experience. There were a lot of people that were selling pens, but they weren't focusing on using them, writing with them, kind of getting that trifecta of ink, paper, and pen mastered and figuring. So I was like, I'm gonna really good dive in on paper and ink and learn that better than anybody else, and then really bring that to the table. So that's kind of how my story came to be. And then I started the blog and the videos and all that kind of thing, and it's here we go ever since. So that's really kind of what it was. And I didn't have a lot of money when we started the business, so we started getting into like Platinum Preppies and the Noodler's pens, some low-end Pelicans, Lamy Safaris, that kind of thing, and some of the Pilot stuff. And then as we kind of gained more popularity, we started picking up more speed with the nicer pens and whatnot. So that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 5 years. My battery is getting lower, running down on the minutes here, but I'll see if I can answer one more question. Simdhuja M on Facebook asked another question: which pens have ebonite feeds, and how does one differentiate ebonite to others, if any? So the Noodler's pens, they all have ebonite feeds, and I know that Omos makes all their pens with ebonite feeds. Other than that, I don't think I can name you anybody modern that makes pens with ebonite feeds. There's probably some on the higher end, maybe, but I think pretty much everybody else uses ABS plastic, injection molded plastic feeds. I don't know that anybody else standardizes on ebonite, and I can't name you a specific pen that uses ebonite. It's very possible that there are some, I'm just not aware of what they actually are. Ebonite is basically a hard rubber as opposed to plastic, so if you heat it up, you can push it up to the nib and it can mate up perfectly, allows for better ink flow. That's the advantage of ebonite. Plus the ebonite is porous and encourages capillary action, so you get a better, smoother writing experience, a smoother flow experience. That's why they're good. How do you tell the difference? They're gonna be darker, and it's gonna be a little bit, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes, especially if it's polished up, but you can smell it, and if it smells like rubber, that's the easiest way to do it. So that's all. I had 2 more questions, but I'm actually not going to get to them because my battery is going to die very, very soon. I'm looking over at my viewfinder right here. That's why I'm kind of like doing this weird thing. But that's all I'm going to have for this week. Again, I'm going to take some of the questions that I had, that I got this week that I didn't get around to. I'm going to shoot another Q&A, have that for you next week. That way you aren't missing out while I'm not here. So if you have any questions that you want to include in there, go ahead and put those into YouTube or Ink Nouveau sooner than later. You can hashtag me on Twitter, GouletQA, hashtag GouletQA, if you want to ask anything. You can shoot an email to gouletqa@gouletpens.com, or you can post on Facebook. I'm not sure if we're going to end up posting on Facebook for this coming week or not. It'll depend on how many questions I have, but we'll see. So that's that. Yeah, I'm going to be in New York and having a grand old time, maybe getting to meet some celebs, that, in my world anyway. That would be pretty sweet. So, and I will come back and talk about all that stuff for sure. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend, a fantastic rest of the week. And yeah, that's about it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Thanks so much, and right on.